It was me, Barry. I made them draw Lola Bunny with fewer sexual features so that you wouldn't be horny and reduce your blood flow to make you a millisecond slower. Slow enough for me to kill Iris.
Heroes and villains. A tale as old as the concept of stories themselves. It's a never-ending struggle that seems to evolve throughout the ages, whether it be the fight for control of the world, a battle of ideologies, or the pursuit of love. Heroes and villains are always at each other's throats through a variety of different genres and settings. However, the genres and stories aren't the only thing that seem to continuously grow. The power levels of these characters also see no bounds, growing to absolutely absurd levels to the point where you think, damn, what kind of villain or hero can ever hope to defeat them? Their powers are unstoppable, and sometimes primordial. They can reshape the world or completely undo it from scratch. So, I wanted to take a brief look at arguably the strongest protagonist in the isekai genre, Yogiri Takato, and the strongest antagonist in shonen history, Ajimu Najimi, to see what exactly makes them so freaking strong, and what would theoretically happen if they came into contact. Would the struggle between hero and villain be reestablished, or either one of them hopeless to be lost within the other's shadow? Isekai protagonists often embark on adventures, facing challenges, making allies, and sometimes even confronting villains or monsters. They may seek to return to their original world, or choose to embrace their new life in an alternate reality. These characters are central to the narratives of isekai stories, driving the plot forward and experiencing personal growth and development as they navigate the unfamiliar and often dangerous landscapes of the new world. However, in order for them to survive these strange new worlds, they are often granted special skills or abilities. Some are more useful than others, but it's rare that they're outright useless. However, there is a category of isekai protagonists whose skills and abilities are so much beyond everyone else that they appear like gods among their fellow man. These protagonists often discover that they possess unique abilities or magical powers that set them apart from the inhabitants of the world. Some protagonists inherit powerful artifacts, weapons, or magical objects upon their arrival in a new world. Some use the opportunity to level up and improve their skills through training and experience. They may train under a mentor or learn through their encounters with formidable adversaries, gradually unlocking new abilities and becoming stronger over time. You get the idea. Several isekai protagonists just have an unfair advantage over others, and this can sometimes result in them becoming overpowered. However, there exists an isekai protagonist so powerful and so utterly unfair that he doesn't need to train, doesn't need to study, or even fight. There literally isn't a single threat or person that can stand up to their power. This is Yogiri Takato, a high school student who, along with his classmates, is transported to another world during a field trip. You might think that Yogiri would show fear, confusion, or curiosity to his new and strange situation, but instead, he's apathetic and somewhat nihilistic. He tends to have a laid-back attitude and rarely shows much emotion, even in dangerous or intense situations. Why, you may wonder? Well, it's not because he's secretly cool or incredibly edgy, but it has a lot to do with what he is. To label Yogiri a mere human would be a grievous oversimplification, for his true nature transcends the boundaries of human perception. Beneath the veneer of humanity lies an eldritch entity of unfathomable proportions. It is said that to gaze upon his true form is to invite madness, for the human mind recoils in horror at the sight of such an unearthly form. Yogiri represents the end that awaits all things: death. Beyond mere mortality, he is the embodiment of the final destination, the conclusion that every entity, from the lowest organism to the grandest cosmic entity, must eventually confront. His presence looms as an inescapable truth, a reminder of the fragility of all that exists. Yogiri Takato's instant death power is pretty straightforward. Despite how scary it sounds, essentially, he has the ability to cause the immediate death to anything or anyone he chooses, just by willing it. It doesn't matter who it is or what it is, whether it's a person, an animal, or even some kind of supernatural creature. If Yogiri targets it, it's a goner. Now you might wonder how this power works. Well, it's not like he shoots a laser beam or throws a fireball or anything like that. It's more like a kind of supernatural command. When he decides that something should die, it just does. No questions asked. There's no physical attack involved. It's all mental. He's tapping into a universal law and enforcing it with just his will. Yogiri is an unstoppable force, one cloaked under the mask of an everyday high school boy. You know what I've noticed in common with a lot of endgame antagonists? Their pursuit of perfection. They view it as the ultimate manifestation of their superiority and intellect. They believe that by achieving perfection, they can transcend the limitations of humanity, become invincible and omnipotent rulers, capable of imposing their will upon the world without resistance. This pursuit of perfection is fueled by a combination of ego, ambition, and relentless quest for power. They seek to mold the world into their own image, free from imperfections. In their minds, perfection represents not only a triumph over their adversaries, but also a validation of their beliefs in their superiority. However, what factors are necessary to create the perfect human? Well, a perfect human will likely have flawless physical attributes, such as perfect health, symmetry, and beauty. They'd be immune to disease, aging, and physical disabilities. This individual will possess unparalleled intelligence, wisdom, and cognitive abilities. They will be free from negative emotions, such as anger, envy, and fear, and they would instead radiate cruelty and curiosity. Basically, a perfect human can be interpreted in various ways. In a philosophical sense, perfection might imply flawless execution. It could indeed mean making no mistakes. However, in practical terms, being human inherently involves imperfection. We learn to grow through our mistakes. So in that sense, making mistakes is an essential part of the human experience. So while the perfect human might strive for excellence and minimize errors, it's perhaps more realistic to consider perfection as a state of continual improvement rather than flawlessness. However, what if there was a being that not only embodied the peak of perfection for the human race, but also didn't make any mistakes? Sounds a little far-fetched, I know, but for Ajimu Najimi, she's never really experienced failure. Well, maybe calling her human will be a little far-fetched. She has existed for a long time, before the universe as we know it had a proper form, and as a result, she had many years to observe us. Out of anyone who's ever lived, she has the most clear and in-depth understanding of how we work. In both our successes and failures, she's been there, watching, listening, learning. In the end, Ajimu had managed to successfully mimic our looks, intelligence, and aspirations, but maybe a little too successfully. Ajimu excelled at everything she did the instant she attempted them. Nothing was a challenge for her. The concept of effort didn't exist, as everything she did was at its most perfect it could ever be. She desired a challenge, someone who could defeat her both physically and mentally. But even when individuals like that appeared, she simply gave up and refused to put in any effort. Maybe it was because she's far too talented, or perhaps it was because she's far closer to a god than human. Ajimu's unnatural talents came in the form of strange supernatural abilities that can manipulate the world as she saw fit. These abilities are named abnormalities, and they are split into two categories called pluses and minuses. Pluses are the supernatural manifestation of your talents, and minuses are the manifestation of your insecurities. Ajimu is meant to be the perfect being, so of course she understands and has access to more pluses and minuses than anyone in history. That combined with her nature as a primordial being allows her to achieve a whopping
7,932,135,523,222
pluses and a whopping
4,925,916,526,110,643
minuses for a combined total of
12,858,651,967,633,865
abnormalities, some of which include the ability to turn herself into God, the ability to travel through dimensions, the ability to revive the dead, the ability to instantly kill anyone she looks at, and potentially even the ability to end the entire manga, meaning she can transcend her own book. With all these abilities at her disposal, combined with her perfection, it's no wonder she ended up seeing every living thing as inferior to herself. To herself, we're all manga characters with no free will, being so weak and worthless that she could destroy us with a thought. She views the world as her playground and enjoys testing the limitations of human potential for her own amusement. An aura of negativity always irradiates off her, only ever surpassed by Misogi Kumagawa. She uses this in tandem with her intelligence to craft cunning schemes in hopes of creating the perfect human, no matter who she has to manipulate and who she has to hurt.
死ね。
不義らしいねってなんでござるか。いくらなんでもボキャブラリーがなさすぎで。
So, what would happen if the strongest Isekai protagonist and the strongest Shonen antagonist happened to be in the same room? Well, realistically, nothing. And not in the "oh, they have no reason to fight so they won't" type of way. No, I mean it's more in their nature not to fight. Yogiri, for starters, is against the idea of fighting. He's fully aware of what he is and what he's capable of. As the embodiment of the end, he knows there's no one that can overcome his ability, and he'll often lay out verbal warnings to his aggressors before things get too heated. Ajimu, on the other hand, is a bit of a coward. It's not because she's weak. Ajimu is fully capable of getting anything she wants, beating anyone she wants, assaulting any person she wants, but doesn't. But because in her mind, everything is meaningless. Despite being basically perfect in every way, she thinks that she lives in a manga, where everything is predetermined, and as such doesn't attempt to fight Medaka because of her status as the main character, which means she's destined to win. If she ever encountered Yogiri, she'd know from the start that there's no hope of winning, not because of how strong he is, but because he's the main character. But hey, I know why 100% of you chose to watch this video. You want to know who would win. Well, here's your answer. I don't know. I'm not saying that Ajimu is stronger than Yogiri. What I'm saying is, there are far too many unknowns with her character to say for sure. Think about it. We don't know who she really is, where she really came from, and what she's truly capable of. For all we know, she's also an eldritch monstrosity far greater than any being in existence, who's simply projecting a human form. Think back to how many abilities she has. You cannot truly comprehend just how large this number is, and the amount of abilities she has at her disposal. Sure, Yogiri is the end. I'm sure you're used to beating that idea into people's heads. Theoretically, you should be able to kill Ajimu with a single word or thought like he has with everyone else in the series. But the amount of abilities she has in her arsenal, is very possible that she has billions of skills specifically made to counter the instant death ability. Like, if I die, a random human will be born with my memories. If I'm erased, a new version of me will be created. The universe will blow up if I die. My skills will manifest in a random human if they are killed. You might say I'm making all this up and doesn't make any sense, but you can't really refute anything I've said, because unless you want to dig through all her skills, there's a high chance a version of these exist. I mean, she has the skill to let her casually become God. Not a god, no. God. What if she has a skill called Become the End? Again, you can't refute this because 1. We don't know what she really is or the full extent of her nature, and 2. She can casually become a high conceptual being, and 3. She has too many skills to properly debunk what I'm saying. The only man to ever beat Ajimu is this guy, but his powers are literally a direct counter, as he can ignore any ability or power in existence. Anyways, I'm not saying Yogiri would lose or anything like that. There's a high chance he'd still win, like he always does. I'm just saying there are far too many mysteries with both characters to have a definitive answer. But that's the kind of headache you get into when the hero and villain are too freaking powerful.
強いて言うなら、熊川くんを見るときは未来を明るくして現実から切り離してみてね。